The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello and welcome to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the creepy little boy with a knife that is Eric Velazquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Yes.
What did we watch? What was this? What was this?
So this is Flesh for Frankenstein, also just sometimes known as Andy Warhol's Frankenstein. And so before we dig deep into it, little story here. So we already talked about growing up, we were both kind of monster kids and into this kind of thing. But when I was in high school and college, I got really snobby about high art cinema and tried to convince myself to watch a lot of foreign movies, and I wanted to look very smart and sophisticated and everything.
As we all do at that time, right?
Yeah. And so one of the things I did was I went through and watched every movie that was released by the Criterion Collection at that time. And this movie is released on Criterion, believe it or not. And so at the time I was not really trying to be into monster movies, and I watched this movie back then and I was like, this does not seem to go with the whole Criterion thing. This isn't, a Bergman movie.
Right.
But so now, years later, this movie has just gotten another fancy deluxe re-release from Vinegar Syndrome, which is the Criterion of trash movies.
Right.
And I think it's definitely the only movie to be released by both of those two companies, so it has that going for it.
To a degree, I can see absolutely why it would fit perfectly in both. But man, this is something. Yeah. All right, so put on your NC-17 blinders because I think we're getting there.
Oh, for sure.
So we're gonna start off with obviously the cast. My one of my favorite actors, Udo Kier, is amazing in this. Over the top, as always, but probably dialed up to 11. Whereas in most places, he's about a 7. He's just hammy. And things like what is it, Blade? I'm trying to think of a few other ones. That's the first one that came to mind.
Yeah, he's just the resident campy foreign guy in a lot of movies, and
right.
But yeah, and while the credits are rolling here, so this movie was released in 3D and 2D. I think the Vinegar Syndrome is the first time it's been released on video in 3D. But if you weren't sure if this was a 3D movie, during the credits, there's a spider hanging down at you, going right into the camera. So, when there's a 3D movie, they always have to do some hey, it's 3D, look at this, we're being 3D.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely going to be the stuff coming at you syndrome that we have from Friday the 13th Part 3 and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. So. But yeah, once we get through the credits, we start out and it's there's these creepy kids, which we'll see a lot of, and they're just kind of wandering through this room that's got a bunch of cages. There's bats and just... I think there's some rats and stuff too. It's it looks like a science lab, animals for experimentation. And then they find a doll that they pick up and go lay on a table, and then they just start getting out surgical tools,
right,
and mutilating this doll.
We've got the surgical tweezers and scalpel combo on this one. Yeah, and then they just go to town. They just rip its cottony guts out and just start digging around in there. By the way, this is basically setting up a lot of what's going to happen throughout the rest
for
of
sure.
the movie. And then they just put it in a guillotine because why not? And lop its head off.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure. That's a strong start. That's a statement.
Yeah, these kids are definitely not like just emotionally destroyed already. Like,
right. They have seen some shit. And they're working through it.
And then like it cuts to the same kids and they're in like a little like pony drawn cart with a woman who like it seems to be their mom and turns out that yes, you know, she is their mom.
It is their mom. Yeah. We will know her as Catherine eventually. But yeah, so they're in these little weird get-ups, like these pristine white caps or almost white caps and like almost lab coats to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm guessing it's all wool. But yeah, it's this really small pony that's pulling this cart of 3 people.
Yeah.
And they come up on a guy playing some bagpipes.
Yeah, and the woman, Catherine, is like, she asks what he's doing or like what is that, but she's also kind of like playing? She's kind of like disgusted by him. Like she's pretty awful, like pretty much right out of the gate here.
Yeah, he's a peasant, you know, he's beneath her, obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What kind of music did he say? It was like Cavalera.
Yeah, I was not familiar. I don't know if this is, you know, some kind of folk music that I'm just not familiar with, or if it's something made up for the movie. But yeah, I mean, he's just playing a bagpipe, and yeah. But then it turns out that there's a couple. Like, he's kind of sitting in like a cart, but it's like a covered thing, and behind him there's like a couple kind of like cuddling, and Catherine kind of like demands that they step out. And then just kind of berates them, like she's acting like they're just like fornicating out in public when they're just like, you know, a happy young couple just like cuddling. It's fine, but she's like just grossed out and like really haughty about, like she's just she's not a nice lady for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously it was implied sex because bagpipe bro was definitely covering for them with his awful music. But yeah, I mean, she's really awful to everyone who she sees beneath her.
Oh, definitely.
Which is apparently everyone other than her husband and kids.
Yeah. And so then we cut to the Baron, and he is like berating his assistant for not keeping the lab clean enough. So, you know, clearly this couple is, you know, cut from the same cloth.
Oh yeah.
He kind of goes on this rant that he's trying to create his perfect creature, as, you know, as Frankenstein always is trying to do. But he's looking for the perfect nose. He keeps using the Latin word nasum, but he's looking for the perfect Serbian nose to represent the pure Serbian race.
Right. It has to be Serbian. Yeah. Why? I was thinking that Frankenstein was always, or I'm sorry, the Baron, he is Baron von Frankenstein, but I always thought he was more German. I didn't know he had such a Serbian fetish, you know. Serbian science is the best, but sorry. But yeah, like he really wants his creations to be like the perfect subservient Serbians. To a degree.
Yeah. And it feels like, you know, I mean, all these Frankenstein movies, there's a degree where, like, Frankenstein is trying to make, like, the perfect man. But this one feels a little bit more like, you know, master race, Nazi-ish than any of our previous versions. Right. Like, the way that he talks about his creature and how perfect and pure it's going to be, it definitely has that kind of, like, Ubermensch kind of vibe going on.
Yeah, and that's probably why they did Serbians versus Germans, because, woo, we've been there before.
Yeah, just put a little distance between it and kind of make it a little cartoonish.
Right, yeah. Instead of Aryans, they're descended from Greeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then about that time, the Catherine and the kids arrive at the castle, and she starts kind of going on talking to the Baron, like complains about the children's schooling, that like she doesn't approve of what they're being taught, so she wants to start homeschooling them or something. And he just like could not care less about this conversation. He's just like not checked in at all.
Well, not only that, they allow dirty peasant kids to go to this school, you know? You can't have that.
Yeah.
Right.
So then like we get Catherine and like a servant woman who I think we find out her name's Olga.
Yes, poor Olga.
They are helping the kids change and get ready for dinner. And, you know, the whole time Catherine continues to complain about people who are lower than her and how they're spreading vicious rumors about her because they're jealous of how great her family is and how it's just like the worst version of like an aristocratic lady that you could possibly imagine.
Right. Yeah, it's very stereotypical, but you know, it probably happens.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so of course Catherine wants the daughter especially, to be beautiful like her and surrounded by beautiful things and insists on all this beauty, whereas the other kids and people in town don't fit up to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we go from talking about that beauty to seeing the Baron down in his lab, and he drags like a nude woman out of a giant fish tank. Or he she's on like a slab in the fish tank, and like he like cranks it and like raises the slab out, and then like lowers her down, and she's next to another slab with a nude man. And this lab it kind of reminded me a little bit of Rocky Horror, which I would probably be the other way around. I'm sure Rocky Horror borrowed from this a little bit. But it's not like any of the labs we've seen before. It's really big and open. It has the whole like pure Greek thing. It's got like big like Greco-Roman statues. So it's definitely like fitting in with his whole idea of like perfection and beauty and carrying on this you know, cultural history or race that he's trying to continue.
Right. Well, at least they had the good graces to at least cover their private bits, and even though they were exposed from the chest up.
And they're not wearing like underwear. They're wearing like little bits of cloth that then are like medically taped. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like the opposite of a loincloth almost, or something. Like it's really strange.
Yeah, it's basically just a little pasty for the naughty bits, I guess.
Yeah.
But
so then the Baron does not like this particular male body he has, and he like drags him off the slab and just drops him in this pile of bodies and body parts. It's just like,
so good.
There's the trash. We'll start this one over again. It's not perfect. It's not pure enough. Like I think he kind of, I don't remember if it's now or later, but it's kind of like the woman that he's created is absolutely perfect, and so now he's got to create a man that lives up to the standards of this perfection he's built.
Exactly. You know, you've got to have the matching perfect species, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so the assistant, Otto, at least he washes his hands at the end of this scene. You know, you got to be sterile and cleanly. But immediately after, we cut to a dinner scene where the family is dressed up like they were going out on the town. Like full tuxedo, hair slicked back. like who does this? Even rich people, do they do this?
Yeah.
I want to know.
And the time period here is really ambiguous, which, you know, we're used to that from like the Universal and the Hammer ones to a little bit lesser degree. And this kind of fits in that same vein where it's like, we got horse-drawn carriages, but like the time's a little wonky. It works.
Yeah, it literally could have taken place anywhere from 1880 to 1940, because the Baron himself is wearing like a 1940 suit and hat. You know, He looks like he stepped out of The Godfather almost.
Yeah. So like the Baron and Catherine are sort of arguing while they're eating. They're arguing about schooling, and they start talking about mother and father. And as you watch this for the first time, you're going to be like, wait, which one of them are we talking about? Her mother and father or his? And then as it goes, you're like, yeah, it's both of theirs. They are a married pair of siblings.
Which doesn't bode well for the future of their own children.
No, it does not.
So we already have an incest. If this tells you, it gets wilder from here, by the way.
Yeah.
This is the tame stuff.
Yeah.
But so they're discussing all of this stuff, but then Baron Frankenstein is like, whoa. I don't like discussing all this private stuff that we just discussed in front of our kids. So then he suggests, all right, why don't you guys go have a picnic tomorrow? Catherine doesn't seem to be into it, which it really sounds like it would be right up her alley. But scene ends as she acquiesces.
Yeah. And then we cut to a scene with these two servants who are digging a hole. And like they kind of have a conversation where they're like, "Why do we keep having to dig holes? Have you ever wondered what these are for?" And they're just like,
Yeah.
"No, I don't know. We dig them, and then they get filled in later. We don't ask questions. We're servants. We do what we're told."
One's named Nicholas, played by a Joe D'Alessandro, who is the most New York sounding guy I have seen in any of these movies.
Yeah.
Apparently, European, the New York district of Europe, with his friend Sasha. It turns out Sasha wants to be a monk.
Yeah. So they're friends, but they have very different sort of like life goals, basically, because Nicholas he's definitely a ladies' man. He's just like constantly looking for women to sleep with. That's pretty much his main thing. And he's like, before you become a monk, like I know you've not been with a woman yet, but don't you want to like at least once, before you become a monk, like once you become a monk, you're not going to be able to do this kind of stuff. So like we should go to the brothel. Like it's a good place to, meet ladies, right? So we should do that soon.
Before you give it up for good,
Yeah. Meanwhile, we get the Baron and his assistant are back to work in the lab, and they're working on like organs, and it's real organs. I'm guessing these are like animal parts or something, but it is like probably the most gory thing we've seen in any of these movies so far.
Oh yeah.
It's just
There's a lot of it.
I think it's real animal organs that have just been painted like red, like dripping red paint coming off of them all. And
at least we have Technicolor Blood back once again.
Yeah, it's that good old hammer bright red blood.
Yeah.
And they kind of are discussing what's wrong with the things.
Also, hold on. Can we talk about what they say those things are that they lift up? I don't think they actually are these things.
Yeah.
But they're seminal vesicles. Yeah. Like he's got the glands that, make the juice. And
but these things they're huge. Like this is like clearly like a kid, kidneys or something. Like
or lungs,
Yeah, it's a large thing.
Yeah. Well, of course, but the seminal vesicles are too long. We got to shorten those up. Holy cow. I guess it's for breeding purposes, right? Because they want to make sure the semen gets to the egg in theory as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Because we have to have a perfect Serbian monster zombie race.
Of course. Yeah, and they use zombie a lot in this to describe the creatures, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, I guess at least they acknowledge it to a point, right? I mean, that's kind of what they are, medically created zombies.
And so then we get the picnic that we previously discussed. It's Catherine and the kids, and they kind of stumble upon some servants fooling around in the woods, which, like if you're peasant serfs, like living on like an estate, like you don't have much going for you. Like,
what are you going to do here?
Yeah, get it where you can.
Right. Yeah, she drops some apples on them. That's how she discovers them.
Yeah.
But it turns out it's Nicholas, and he's with a random woman again.
Yeah. She kind of like berates him, like, you shouldn't, this is not appropriate. You shouldn't be doing this. You're in trouble. And I want to see you in the castle first thing tomorrow morning.
Right.
And like, she's really rude and like, cold to him. But there's also a definite like underlying note of like, oh, she wants to sleep with him. Like,
yeah. It is a flirtatious berating, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
To a degree. Yeah, she's definitely got some strong dommy mommy vibes going on.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we get back to, more experimentation, and like this is where the Baron is like really clear about like this male has to be virile because he has to mate with the perfect female so that we can create this new master race. So he has this idea that the way to get a really, really virile man is to go to the brothel. Because he's and like you kind of get this kind of this comes from the Warhol scene, so there's kind of like a subtle like homosexual undertone to this conversation that like I definitely think is there on purpose. Right. So he starts describing that like his perfect woman is very androgynous. She's kind of flat chested and very narrow hipped and everything, right. Which every body type is valid and everything. But then he starts talking about that like the women at the brothel, they are curvaceous and have large breasts, and it's disgusting. And, so any man that could possibly manage to sleep with such a woman has to be very virile.
Right. He has to want it that bad, right?
Yeah.
For a curvaceous... All right, anyway, we're going to keep going.
Yes. So now, we can see where things are going here, where we've got, like, the Baron and Otto who are going to be going to the brothel, as well as, Nicholas and Sasha, who are also going to the brothel. And, sure enough, the servants arrive first. They go inside, and...
we have several sex scenes at this point.
Yeah, they kind of, they're really, like, sort of playful sex scenes that are, like, it's not... It doesn't actually look like people having sex. It's more people like rolling around on top of each other naked and sort of cuddling and having fun. Like it's foreplay. It's very playful. It's a fun, it's fun. Sasha's not really into it. He's just kind of like chilling over to the side with a girl, like not really doing much. Meanwhile,
he's the most disinterested man.
Oh yeah,
He's like, I only want to be a monk. That's my only aspiration in life.
Yeah. Nicholas is basically like diving into like a swimming pool of women. Like he is having some fun.
Yeah, but of course he has to ruin it, and he busts out a lizard in the middle of sexy times. Where did he get the lizard?
I don't know if it like fell on This isn't a euphemism either. This is a
this is an actual lizard.
And so the lizard.
Wait, maybe it is a euphemism. Maybe that's what they meant, but in the script.
But so this lizard crawls all over the sex workers, and they get freaked out and they run outside. So meanwhile, the Baron and Otto are outside waiting for a guy to show up. And so they see like two nude sex workers run outside. Then Sasha peeks his head out to comfort the women because, he doesn't want to sleep with them, but he's still like a good guy and he like wants to make sure they're okay. And so now we get the mistaken identity thing where like the Baron
That's the guy.
Yeah, this guy's with two women. Like he's the guy.
By the way, I love how Frankenstein's like, that's the most amazing thing. Two women? Like he is both outraged and like in awe of this man.
Yeah.
And it's like, for most people, that's I'm not going to say the dream. We can cut that part out. But I mean, like a lot of people aspire to that versus Frankenstein, who's like, this is outrageous. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely get the sense that like the Baron and Catherine have had children, and those are probably the only times that they have slept together.
There were 2 times. It was successful. Enough done.
Yeah. So Sasha, of course, goes back inside, but then eventually the friends leave, and they're followed by the Baron and Otto, and they kind of come up with a plan where Otto distracts Nicholas so that the Baron can decapitate Sasha
with some massive freaking shears.
Yeah.
Like, this is some clock tower shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they do. Like, Otto just comes out of nowhere with the cudgel and just brains Nicholas, who's already drunk, stumbling.
Yeah.
And then the Baron just comes up with the shears and just clips Sasha's head off like it's no big deal, like he was just cutting his hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get the dummy head and the bright Technicolor blood. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was something.
Yeah. The Baron picks up the head and he's like, this is the perfect Serbian nasum. Like, this is the dream. So he's all excited. They leave, and then, Nicholas wakes up and, like, is, next to his decapitated friend and is like, what happened?
Right. And he does the most logical thing, which is immediately pull his friend's body over and I guess buries him.
Yeah, he like drags it off screen, and then like a little bit later we find out that he has buried him. So
right.
I guess he's kind of like, I don't know what I did while I was drunk, but if I was responsible, I can't get caught.
Right, versus going to the authorities and be like, yo, well, I guess maybe he had enough wherewithal to understand that if he went to the higher authorities, he would probably get the one blamed. So I guess it's not that ridiculous, but damn, man, that's your best friend.
Yeah. So then we get to the Baron and Otto kind of performing surgery. They're putting together this, using this new head, and, the Baron's all excited. This is going to be his master race that will obey him. And, again, like we get this over and over again where like somehow the mad scientist always thinks that just by creating this creature, it's automatically just going to obey his every word. which doesn't necessarily, like, you have children, you create them.
Right.
They don't obey you necessarily. Like,
well, to be fair, this version of the Baron doesn't really interact with his children, so he doesn't know that they would ignore what he's saying.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So then we get Nicholas showing up to the Baroness, as he was commanded, and she sort of like continues to berate him, tells him he's disgusting, and then like it's kind of like, you've been a bad boy, so you need to hop in bed here so I can continue to punish you.
One of your duties will be to have sex with me, which is basically what she says.
Oh, definitely.
Then you're going to serve food.
Yeah, she's like, she hires him on to be like a house servant instead of a field servant. But like, yeah, it's definitely like one of your primary responsibilities is, it kind of comes back to the bed warmer thing from Horror of Frankenstein.
Right.
So he ends up, like, he tells her what happened the night before, that, his friend was killed and all this, and she kind of like sort of softens up a little bit and kind of like comforts him a bit. I don't think she necessarily believes or cares about that, but is just kind of like, manipulating him a little bit more, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of dismisses it. She's like, oh, it clearly was just a nightmare, because nothing that ridiculous can happen in real life.
Yeah. And then if you want ridiculous, we cut to the Baron has, the female creation is done.
Yep.
Is complete, but he like starts clipping open the incision or the stitches along her abdomen.
By the way, content warning for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we said NC-17 at the beginning, and that is for a lot of different reasons. One of them we're getting ready to talk about.
Yeah. So as you said, he starts cutting into the incisions already on her perfect body, and like the Technicolor blood starts pouring out. In theory, she's dead by now, but we learn she's not because her eyes open up.
Yeah. He opens up her stomach cavity.
Yep.
And blood's coming out, and he starts sort of like massaging the blood into her skin, like, definitely like into her breasts specifically, but like just kind of rubbing blood all over her. And then he kind of like puts his hand into her stomach cavity and is sort of like massaging her organs. And like it's pretty clear at this point that he is getting like sexual gratification from this.
And this is a euphemism. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so like he ends up like, they lower the table like flat, and he is on top of her, sort of like dry humping her. He's still wearing clothes, but he's just kind of grinding against her while his hand is still inside her abdomen. He like commands that Otto look away from him. So Otto's just standing there with his back to him the whole time. It's super creepy and just very gross. And obviously, it's a euphemism for sex, but it's also like, it kind of goes into this whole thing that we've seen since like, James Whale, where it's like this creation of life is sort of like a sexual act in a way. Like this is a different way of creating life than like, having sex and having a baby. Like, and so, clearly
maybe that's what makes that's what makes it more perverse.
Yeah. And, like in the whale movies, like there's definitely some like homosexual undertones. And so, of course, it's clear that this Baron is not necessarily attracted to women. So it all kind of comes together in this sort of strange way and culminates once he finishes. He has like the most quotable line from this movie. He tells Otto, to know death, you have to fuck life in the gallbladder.
Yep. There you go. So kids, take away from that what you will. Well, it turns out that not only is the Baron getting his rocks off, it turns out so is Mom and Nicholas.
Yes.
So yeah, we cut to them, and apparently Catherine is very satisfied with Nicholas's work. They're kind of rolling around, and she orders Nicholas to go ahead and get dinner prepared to be served.
So then we get dinner, and she is telling the Baron that she's hired a new servant. And he's very skeptical, and he's like, I don't want him disturbing me. I want to keep him away. He shouldn't be in my lab. And she's like, oh, I'll keep him busy. Don't you worry. He's not going to be anywhere near your stuff. And then we pretty much cut back to them in bed again after dinner. And then we see that there are all these kind of like paintings and mirrors and stuff all over the walls of the Baroness's room. And some of those mirrors are like, if you see like those really old mirrors where like the the silver has kind of worn away on the back, and you can kind of see through the glass. There's some stuff kind of like that kind of going on, but it's it's like a hole through the wall, and the kids are like behind those mirrors just watching their mom sleeping with a servant.
Right. And by the way, the kids have been popping up here and there throughout the movie. We just haven't really commented on it too much. It just in weird places. At this point, they've already overheard what the Baron is doing. Also, obviously, they're now listening in on Mom's plans. But literally, none of the parents have acknowledged these children other than like while they were eating.
Yeah,
that's at the beginning of the movie.
And they're really they talk about the kids while the kids are there, but they never talk to the kids. But yeah, there's kind of like a weird sort of balcony in the lab that sometimes they're up there kind of watching the medical experiments. So like clearly this explains why they're so messed up and weird and chopping up dolls at the beginning, because this is what they're seeing. Like they've been observing their weird parents' weird behavior, you know, for a while now, and they're emotionally scarred from that.
Yeah, and absolutely, and especially the fact that they've already kind of dealt with, hey, your sibling is a perfectly suitable sexual partner. At least once or twice.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So then we go back to the lab, and they are now trying to revive the creatures. And this is a much more sort of like high-tech scene than any we've seen before. There's no storm. There's no lightning. There's kind of like this big boxy thing that kind of looks like a mainframe, like an old style, you know, room size computer sort of thing, and it's kind of got lights and dials spinning and stuff, but you know, it doesn't have the animated quality to it that like our spinning science wheel or all of the sparking devices in the Universal movies. It's definitely more like utilitarian.
Right, absolutely. And it's more modern to a degree, right?
Yeah. But it works. The creatures both wake up, they you know, get them standing up. The Baron sort of has them move different body parts. Like he says, raise your arm, and they raise their arms, and turn your head, and they do that. And he's like, okay, great. So soon they'll be ready to breed.
Right. That's what we have to do. They have to have kids, and they have to have them as soon as possible. And I don't want to wait the whole 9-month period. Can we speed that up a bit, maybe?
Yeah.
But he actually talks himself out of it. Luckily, I don't think I could have sat through him somehow speeding up that process.
Yeah, I don't know what that would have looked like, but it probably would have been unpleasant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're back to dinner. Like it's basically like meals and then lab and sex scenes and then back to meals.
Yep.
But so this time, the Baroness has invited her new servant to like serve them. So like the Baron is getting to see Nicholas for the first time, and in spite of the fact that, you know, they recently knocked him out and decapitated his friend, the Baron doesn't seem to recognize him.
Right.
But then the Baron's like, well, I actually have 2 guests that I wanted to invite to dinner as well. And so the 2 creatures come in, and they're fully clothed now, but they also have all these weird sort of like braces on different parts of their bodies and stuff. So they're not like fully healed up yet.
They almost look like the puffed vests from the 80s to a degree.
Yeah. The Baron doesn't recognize Nicholas, but of course Nicholas does recognize Sasha's head.
Right.
But he's pretty chill about, or he's subtle about it at least. Like you can tell, like us, the audience, we see like, oh, he knows what's up, but he doesn't like throw a fit or anything. Then it almost seems like maybe the creature, Sasha recognizes him too, but he doesn't say anything either. And it almost seems like he may be mute, though later we will hear him talk. I don't know if he's just not there yet or if he's just remaining silent for the moment.
I think at this point, the vocal cords, and they're not really able to eat at this point, which we discover as Nicholas tries to give food to the female monster and to Sasha. And the Baron just isn't having it. He's like, they're not ready to eat yet. Don't do this.
Yeah. Which is a weird thing. Like, here are my guests from out of town. They're just here to help with my experiments, but
not ready.
They're not ready to eat.
Yeah.
Everybody just takes that at face. Okay, sure. I guess that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
But then we get the Baroness and Nicholas are back in her bedroom, and he's like, so that guest that the Baron brought in, that was my friend's head. And she's like, "Oh, your friend was?" And he's like, "No. It wasn't my friend. He was much taller than my friend, but it was my friend's head for sure."
Right.
And she's like, "You must be mistaken. That doesn't make any sense. That can't be."
To be fair, I'm going to give Nicholas points on this. He's the most astute observer that we've dealt with in any of these movies whatsoever.
Oh, definitely.
He actually knows he already knows what's up. He's like, this guy cut off my friend's head and put it on that guy's body. I mean, obviously he saw the headless body.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he actually knows how to put 2 and 2 together. Good for him.
And so he's like, "I want to go to the Baron's lab. I need to find out what's going on." Right. And she's like, "Forget it. You got to stay out of the lab. Like you don't belong there."
And to help him forget, she gives him oral pleasure.
Yeah, one head for another, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough.
And she kind of it's like off screen. She just kind of crawls off camera, but it's pretty clear what's going on.
Yeah, heavily implied. So then we get the kids playing with a disembodied hand in a jar. Because that's what you do as your kids, at least in this household.
Yeah, so this is like a rare moment where like Otto and the Baron are not in the lab, so the kids are able to kind of like poke around more than they usually do.
And the desk starts glowing bright red. The desk itself, like the wood.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the heck is this? Do we got more, like, is this like aliens? Do we have aliens here? Well, the kids go to the desk, open it up, and inside is a just pair of disembodied lungs breathing and beating.
Yeah. So they're just kind of like enthralled by this, and then they hear noise, so they run to hide. And of course, it's their father and Otto and the creatures all coming in. And they kind of run to the back of the lab, and we kind of find that there's sort of like a secret passage that they crawl through, and it leads to like a sort of dungeon kind of area.
That's when they get attacked by bats.
Yes.
Just weird bat attack in the middle of this movie.
Yeah, so we don't get any spinny science wheels, but we at least do get some flappy bats.
We get flappy bats. And of course, this scene ends with just the kids in the background huddled to the wall and just random flappy bat staring into the screen because it is a 3D movie.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to have that.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Baron and Otto, they put the creatures back on the slab, and he says something about that, like, that new servant kind of looks familiar, but I can't place where I know him from.
Right. Of course, the Baron's like, all men look the same. All of them except for my Serbian.
Yeah.
He loves Serbians. This guy.
Then we go back to the Baroness and Nicholas, and they are, back in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And now we get like Nicholas, like there's some full frontal
male nudity, baby.
Yeah. He's just like walking around, like coming back to bed, basically, just fully naked. And he gets in bed, and they kind of like cuddle in this really awkward pose, like they're like facing opposite directions. Like it's it's not the 69 pose because they're not quite lined up really. But
right.
She's kind of like kissing him under his arms, sort
like
of.
His armpits or something.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on here, but, if they're getting something out of it, good for them, but it looks very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you get the gross mouth sounds. It's not any ASMR. It's just full wet smacking and
Yeah. And then we go back again to the lab, and Olga decides to go into the lab for some reason and finds the two creatures on the slab and, is obviously freaked out. She clearly was completely unaware of what was going on in here.
This is the first time she stumbled upon this?
Yeah. Like, okay. She just doesn't go to half of the house, even though she's like the cleaning lady, but
right.
Okay, whatever.
Well, it turns out Otto's discovered her as she sneaks in, and Otto is pretty awful.
Yeah. He chases her. And he's kind of like he's
Licking
chasing her around the dungeon, just like waggling his tongue like Gene Simmons style the whole time.
Yep.
And like he catches her in the dungeon, and he goes. I don't know if I didn't understand what happened here, but he like acts like he's gonna like tear her dress open to like sexually assault her. But he like tears her open in the process, and her guts fall out. I don't know if he meant to do that or if he just was too overzealous in his dress tearing. I'm not really sure. But either way, he has disemboweled her and she dies.
Yeah. And of course, she falls over a grate and her entrails fall into camera view because, once again, 3D.
Yeah. Then we get Nicholas sort of like wandering the hallways of the house, and the Baron finds him and is like, "You're not supposed to be around here. You need to go back to the half of the house that you're welcome in. This is my territory. Get out of here." But he doesn't really like fully escort him away. He's just like, go back the way you came. And Nicholas immediately comes upon the children, who are also wandering around the house.
but like, okay, so I thought I was tripping out and missed some part of the movie, because he's like, "Hey, we've got to get out of here. You got to show me other ways to get out of here." And I'm like, did I miss the part where he actually was introduced to the kids and like spoke to them? But no, he's the only adult who acknowledges these kids in this one moment to get him out of the castle, or get his friend out of the castle.
He did serve that dinner when the kids and the creatures were there, but like he didn't speak to the kids then. But yeah, I mean, that would have been the only time they would have ever been aware of his existence, other than them watching him have sex with their mom. But he doesn't know about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, "Can you help me find a different way to find out what's going on around here?" And the kids are like, "Oh yeah, we're the creepy silent kids who live in the walls. Of course, we know all kinds of secret passages."
Yeah, we got you. It's all good.
And so then we get the Baron and Otto are trying to get the creatures to mate, and it's like super awkward. Like they're just standing close to each other, and he keeps having the female creature kiss the male, and then he just expects, like, she like kind of kisses him on the cheek, sort of. And like he's like waiting, like if this is like a torso up type shot, and one assumes that what's going on here is he's waiting for the male creature to get aroused so that they can now mate, and like he's just not,
because he's supposed to be full of lust, right, at this point.
Right, but it's of course this is Sasha, so he's not interested at all, and like a couple pecks on the cheek are not going to do it for, definitely not going to do it for him.
Right.
So the Baron is getting frustrated. Meanwhile, Nicholas has seen all of this from like the hiding place that the kids have shown him. So he goes back and like tells the Baroness what he's seen, and he's like, "Your husband has these bizarre experiments going on in the lab," and tells him the whole thing. And she kind of defends him, sort of denies. She's like, "That doesn't sound like what he would be. He's got important scientific work, of course, but that's not what he's doing." And
he's helping these people. They're obviously sick with something, and he's healing them. Right?
Yeah, so, like, clearly the Baron and the Baroness have kind of like a don't ask, don't tell policy. Like, she's got her side of the house where she can do whatever she wants. He's got his side of the house where he can do whatever he wants. And we meet at the dinner table and nowhere else.
Right. We never see each other in bed anymore. We've given that up.
Yeah.
But, but I do love that she says that everything the Baron does is well planned.
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. But Nicholas is like, "Well, I'm going to put a stop to this."
Right, and that's when her degradation of Nicholas goes a little bit too far, and he slaps the ever-loving crap out of her.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we also get the Baron and Otto. They're like going for a walk. And they're trying to figure out why they failed. He's completely mystified. Like, they did everything right, but nothing's working. And he sees the kids. So this is, I forgot about this. The Baron does talk to the kids in this one scene, but like, it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, he's like, "Have you seen anything? Do you know what might be going on that would be causing problems?"
There has to be something.
And they don't even say anything. Like, it's not like they're just like, shake their heads and kind of scurry away, basically. Then we get Nicholas gets into the lab and is talking to Sasha / the creature, trying to like, "We got to find a way to free, I'll help you get out of here. We can escape. We can fix you. We can make the Baron put you back together in your normal body."
But as excited as Sasha is, he's not very interested in anything, apparently, because he doesn't want to leave either. He belongs here now, right?
He's very just like checked out at this point.
Right. I think he was checked out from the beginning.
Yeah, true. And we also get like then the Baron sort of confronting the Baroness. He's like, "You must be responsible for this failure in some way. I know about your filthy sex urges." So we get a lot of like back and forth at this point, and we get back to Nicholas where he's continuing to try to free the creature, and like Sasha is like, "Actually, I just kind of want to die." Like,
right.
Like nothing matters anymore. Like it's kind of clear at this point, like he wanted to be a monk just so he could like drop out of society and just like, you know, live out with very little interaction with any humans or any sort of connection to society in any way. And at this point he's just like, now I'm this weird monster, like there's just no point in going on. Like I don't want to live anymore.
The dude's massively depressed is what we're saying.
But like Nicholas is not buying it. He's like, well, you know, we're fine. Like we'll find a way. We'll free you. So he does get the creatures free, but then the Baron shows up before he can do anything and is just like, capture this man. And Sasha does it. Like he just like
make him unconscious.
Yeah, he knocks out Nicholas. So then the Baroness finally makes her first appearance in the lab, and this is where things get like, if things weren't creepy enough at this point, things get even creepier, because so the Baroness makes her appearance in the lab, and she wants, since the Baron has knocked her boy toy unconscious, she's like, well,
right,
I want 2 hours with the male creature.
Yeah, I can make him want to breed, right?
Yeah, and like the Baron's like, okay, sure. So he's just like sends them away to her bedroom. Like, you know, he knows about her filthy sex urges, as he said earlier. So he's clearly just condoning his wife sleeping with this weird monster that he's created, which, you know, I mean, like they're already this weird incestuous, like at this point they can't really get any weirder. So sure, have sex with a monster that I made.
Yeah.
And so she goes upstairs with Sasha / the creature and sort of like kind of commands him to, you know, she's like, get in bed, you know, touch me here, do this. Like he's completely inanimate unless he's being specifically told a thing to do. Like he's not actively participating in this in any way.
Right.
But you know, she likes things kind of rough, and she accidentally asks for things to be a little too rough, and she ends up being strangled to death, basically.
Well, more like bear hug of death, right?
Yeah, it's not like a throat strangle. It's like he hugs her so hard that she can't breathe anymore and like ceases to breathe. Yeah. Meanwhile, like the Baron's like, okay, so this is the person's brain that I need. This servant who's been sleeping with my wife for, you know, weeks or whatever, he's the guy that I need.
Well, let's not forget that Otto, being awful and gross and the worst, has come upon the female monster at this point. And he's a little jealous of the Baron, and he wants to get some of his action. Yeah. So he tongues her wound and tries to open her up and, you know, does what the Baron did.
Yeah. But clearly he does not have the surgical prowess that the Baron does. So he manages to kill the female creature in the process. So then the Baron shows up as the female creature has died. And he's, you know, obviously not happy about this.
Yeah, you ruined my creature.
Yeah. So he strangles Otto. So now, you know, if you're keeping track, the Baroness has died. The female creature has died. Now Otto has died. Also Olga a little earlier. So the body count is ratcheting up quickly.
But I do like how the Baron yells at Otto. He's like, you touched her in that spot that was only mine to touch her. She's now ruined because of you. Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely some gross like possessiveness there, but you know, I mean, you know, add it to the pile. Like it's gross, but like compared to everything else, it's whatever.
Yeah. That's probably one of the more tame and sane parts, right?
Yeah.
But of course, Sasha brings in the body of Catherine at this point.
Yeah.
In his hand, kind of Maria.
So obviously that upsets the Baron further. So then he like commands the Sasha creature to kill Nicholas.
Right, it's Nick's fault. Nick's the one who did this.
Yeah, he's fired up all of this lust in his wife, which caused her to be vulnerable to the creature. And at this point, it feels like he's just like, I need to burn everything down, and then I'll start all over again later. Like everything has gotten messed up.
I mean, that is a very Baron thing to do, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. But so at this point, Sasha's tired of taking orders, and he starts kind of like stalking towards the Baron instead of Nicholas.
And the Baron, being a smart Baron, knows what's up and starts running.
Yeah. So he tries to go to the dungeon, and he's like made it to the dungeon door, and Sasha slams the door on the Baron's hand, removing that. Like he slams it hard, like
fully. Yeah, cut off that cuts off the hand. We've got Technicolor Blood spraying everywhere at this point.
Yeah. So now he's losing it completely at this point. He grabs a scalpel with his good hand.
Well, he does try to put his hand back on. He just puts the hand up to the stump and it just falls right back off.
Yeah. Which he's done all the stitches. He should know how this works. But
come on, you got to stitch it together.
But like clearly he's losing his grasp on reality. And we didn't mention this, but like for most of this, Nicholas is hanging.
Right, he's suspended.
Yeah, he's tied up and hanging from the ceiling. So like he is not able to really do anything right now. So the Baron is headed towards Nicholas with a scalpel. He's ready to kill him himself since the creature wouldn't listen. And then we get like probably the best of just like the gratuitous 3D moments of the movie. The creature comes up behind the Baron and impales him on a spear. And so the spear shoots out of his chest with the heart stuck on the end of the spear. Like right at the camera. So like we got this.
It's so good.
You know, it's fantastic. It's just so over the top.
I do love that the Baron at this point's like, my work is not finished, and he gives a monologue as he's dying.
Yeah, as his heart is outside of his body on the end of a spear.
Yeah, and then finally Udo Kier gives the best death performance as he kind of convulses and crosses his eyes and falls down.
Yeah. So at this point now, the only living things left in the room are Sasha and Nicholas. The friends are back together.
Yeah.
And, Nicholas is like, cut me down. Like we can...
let's get out of here.
Yeah. And, Sasha again is like, no, I belong here with all these dead people. I'm dead. I belong with these dead people. I'm going to just, die.
Right. And of course, instead of doing something like, hey, I'm going to let my friend go... Sasha reaches into his own chest and literally rips himself apart.
Yeah.
And dies there.
Yeah.
So as we have a lovely swelling of music, which that's trippy.
So now Nicholas is just hanging from the ceiling with like a ton of dead bodies all around him, and it's just like you almost expect like the Curb Your Enthusiasm music to play or something. He's just like, well, here I am, just stuck here with nobody to help me.
Well, it turns out there are people there to help him. It's the kids, Eric and Monica. They're going to help him.
Yeah. So they see this bloody mess of, dead bodies everywhere, and they pick up some scalpels and they go...
But as the lungs start beating again that are in the cabinet, it's like the lungs are telling them to do bad things.
Oh yeah, they were kind of enthralled by them earlier. It definitely feels like they're being spoken to. Right. So they get scalpels and they go over and they start turning the crank to lower Nicholas down.
Right.
And I've heard people say that this is an ambiguous ending, that they might be trying to cut him loose. But no, they're definitely not trying to cut him loose.
Nah. But
they're
hey,
going to cut him
happens,
up.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Before that happens, we do get an abrupt end.
Yes.
But yes, those kids were going to definitely cut him into pieces just like that doll. It was absolutely a callback to that.
Yeah, we don't see it happen, but
No.
if you think they're going to set him free, I don't think you've been paying attention to this movie.
No. So we could assume that going in the future, the kids get married, possibly have 2 kids of their own, as the Nicholas monster serves them, apparently.
Yeah, and they're going to just, like, it was like when the Baron is like, my work's not done, I need to pass the torch on, like, this is it. Like, this is, they are going to continue this. It's almost as if they have reincarnated into these children.
Right.
Yep, so it's just going to continue the cycle of weird incestuous siblings making monsters, and it's
so that was a thing.
So yeah, it's I will say it is one of the most unique Frankenstein movies we've watched. Like it is. It has a lot of similar beats, obviously, mad scientist creating life and everything, but it tells it in a way that none of the others have told it. That is for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously this has some, controversy behind it, just being what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of nudity, you've got a lot of, sort of weird taboo subjects. I mean, Andy Warhol did not, like, this is directed by Paul Morrissey, but it's often called Andy Warhol's Frankenstein because he kind of like, it kind of came out of the factory with like his, Andy Warhol kind of liked to sort of champion creators and then sort of, put his name on their work, like,
right.
Like the first Velvet Underground album that has his name on it bigger than their name. So this kind of that same deal. But, I mean, obviously it it is of a piece. It feels very Andy Warhol because, you know, Paul Morrissey was just kind of part of that group and what they were doing there and stuff. But yeah, it's very, very strange. And, you know, if you can't handle a lot of weird gore and, you know, nudity and strange sex scenes, it may not be for you.
But
I
think we could say if you can't handle a lot of weird.
Yeah. But if you like monster movies and horror movies, this is probably going to work for you. And it is definitely fun.
Yeah.
And like we said, you know, it just got a really fancy new reissue. So like if you're into buying stuff, it's out now, I think. And it also, in conjunction with that, I think Vinegar Syndrome's like cleaned up 4K release got put on Shudder. So if you don't want to buy it, you can also get it for free there.
Hashtag not sponsored.
So it's a good time to watch this movie.
Yeah, definitely at least give it a view just to say you have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an experience, that's for sure.
It absolutely is.
All right, Anthony, where can they find us?
So, yeah, if you want to say hi on the socials, we're at The Frankencast on Twitter and Instagram, and thefrankencast@gmail.com on, if you want to send us an email. And, of course, we always like to remind you that, likes and subscribes and rates and reviews and all of those kind of things, wherever you're listening to us, those are definitely appreciated as well.
Yeah. They let everybody know that, we're worth listening to or at least spending your time on, which is valuable, of course.
Yes.
We do appreciate it.
Yes, we definitely appreciate everyone who's listening. And, if you like it and want us to keep doing this and to keep expanding, the more people who hear us, the more, likely that will be. So, yep, that's definitely appreciated. So, yeah, I think that wraps up this week. And next week, we're kind of continuing a theme of classic sort of Frankenstein movies that are getting like fancy reissues. I think this one is not out yet and is getting ready to come out in the next week or two.
It'll definitely be by the time you hear it.
Yeah, I think so. And Arrow Video is putting out like a really fancy reissue of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, this is such a good one. Robert De Niro is Frankenstein. I mean, it's so good.
Yeah, clearly inspired by the Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. So,
yeah, you got the Bram Stoker's Dracula and then Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's definitely that kind of thing was going on where they were kind of like nodding back to the original creators. But yep, so it's exciting. We will get into that next week.
In that case. To be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velazquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.